Next up, things you didn't know about one of my favorite shows of all time, Community. Have either of you watched any or all of it?
I've never seen an episode.
I watched most of it mainly because of Allison Brie.
She was fantastic. One of my favorite scenes is when they play Dungeons and Dragons, and she ends up the character Hector the Well-Endowed, because they just randomly grab the character sheets, and it's her describing what she is doing to a like a handmaiden or something that they're trying to get horses from, and she's like whipping it out, and she's like slapping that at, and she's like 2 to 3, 4 fingers, but there's no sound, so it's her just like it's her miming the whole thing because there's music playing. It's brilliant. That episode, by the way, not available on Netflix or Hulu.
There you go.
Do you know why?
Got the Disney Plus treatment.
Do you know why?
No.
Because
Andy Dick.
No, not because of Andy Dick. Because Ken Jeong, right here, they felt he looked like he was in blackface because he was dressed up like a drow, which is a dark elf.
Okay.
Honest to God.
So that's a no, but the 17-year-old boobs is fine.
Apparently, yeah. Apparently, that's where we're at this point. And for all I know, they may have edited out the American Beauty one. But yeah, so that's legitimate. Because I remember, this is one of those, do you guys have those shows that you go watch over and over again? And even if you're doing something else, you kind of keep it on in the background, like especially like you're cleaning your house or something.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
So this is one of the shows that I do this with frequently, especially if if I'm falling asleep at night and you know that you don't have to actively be watching because you've already seen it 1,000 times. Community is one of those shows for me. And I was going through the show about a year ago, and I was really excited to get to the Dungeons and Dragons episode because it's one of my favorite episodes. It's not there. Even Yvette Nicole Brown, who plays Shirley, she's like, there's no reason that should be banned. Like, there's no reason that shouldn't be available out there.
Welcome to woke culture.
So, I really need to clip that.
Andy Dick.
So, Community debuted back on September 17th, 2009. The show was based on creator Dan Harmon's experiences at community college, and I myself, as a community college graduate, can agree. This is what all of your classes look like in community college. It is a mishmash of everything. In the opening episode, the dean is going through all of the different types of people that go to community college, and it's the failed quarterback, the single mom, the old guy trying to keep his brain, active. Mm-hmm. Honest to God, every single class you take in community college, you will have these people there. So he hit the nail on the head. Now, the problems between Chevy Chase and Dan Harmon, those are pretty well documented.
Yeah.
Isn't there well-documented issues between Chevy Chase and every single person he's ever worked with?
That's true. And actually, I jumped ahead. I skipped one part here real quick. So some of the characters on the show were actually based on other fictional characters. So Jeff Winger, played by the great Joel McHale, was based on John Winger, Bill Murray in Stripes.
There you go.
Now, Annie Edison, played by the great Allison Brie, who, by the way, also just got cast as Evil Lynn in the new live-action He-Man.
All right.
So, be looking for that. Annie Edison, she was modeled after Tracy Flick from Election. And obviously, if you've seen either of those movies and you've watched Community, you can tell to a T exactly where this was coming from. So back to what I was talking about before, the problems between Dan Harmon and Chevy Chase were pretty well documented. I mean, there was one point where on Harmontown, which was Dan Harmon's podcast that he would do live, he was playing like a voicemail from Chevy Chase in front of the rest of the crowd and stuff. I mean, it was insane how much these two didn't get along. And as much as Icky, you said that Chevy Chase not getting along with people is a pretty common occurrence, it's also the same thing for Dan Harmon. There's a really good documentary. It's either called Welcome to Harmontown or it's called Harmontown. And it's about him when he got fired, which we'll get to here in a bit, from Community. He took his podcast on the road and he was traveling around doing live shows of his podcast. And they brought in all of these other like pretty famous people who have worked with him before, including like Sarah Silverman. And she has this one quote in there where she says, "He's a brilliant writer, but I've never had anybody make me feel as bad about who I am as he has."
Well, wasn't he didn't he get in trouble for a lot of stuff while he was doing Rick and Morty and had to be kicked off the show?
No, that was
the other guy.
No, that was Justin Roiland.
Okay. One of them.
Yeah, no, Justin Roiland was the one that ended up getting busted for all kinds of weird, creepy stuff.
Ren and Stimpy stuff.
Pretty close.
Now, when they kicked him off Community, is that when the show kind of had a shift and declined a little bit?
Yeah, so it was, and actually, I'll go into this a little bit more at the end. So it was after season 3. So season 4, he wasn't the showrunner, and you can tell, it's just. You can tell it was somebody trying to write as Dan Harmon. It just wasn't coming off. But he then ended up getting hired back on for season 5. But we'll get to that here in just a minute. Now, Harmon has revealed that there were some other people in mind to play Pierce, which was played by Chevy Chase. And that included Fred Willard, who actually came in and played Pierce in a daydream sequence, oddly enough.
Didn't we find out he's a chomo, though?
Who? Fred Willard?
Yeah.
Was he?
Didn't that happen?
Oh, Google it. John Cleese was also thought of for the role, and Patrick Stewart.
Patrick Stewart. I think John Cleese would have been fantastic in that.
So there's one such issue that came up in the episode Digital Estate Planning. This is a great episode where they are in an 8-bit video game. And they end up going up against Giancarlo Esposito, actually. He's kind of the bad guy in this episode. So there was supposed to be an end scene where Abed hands Pierce a thumb drive that has the game loaded on it. But for some reason, Chevy just didn't want to record that scene, so they didn't get to it. He just refused to do it because he didn't want to do it.
I don't want to do it.
And I'm telling you, that episode is a fantastic episode. If you haven't seen Community, go watch it. Because there's also, as we were talking about Beetlejuice earlier, I don't know if you guys know this, but there is kind of a secret Beetlejuice Easter egg where throughout the first season, they say Beetlejuice in different episodes, and the third time it comes up in that season, Beetlejuice walks in the background. So he shows up on the third time.
Is it actually Keaton, or is it just someone dressed up?
No, it's just somebody dressed up as him, because it's by the time they say it the third time, it's during a Halloween party. So they're in their study hall, and then somebody behind them is dressed up as Beetlejuice. So they're like, "Who is it, Beetlejuice?" And then you see this dude walk behind as Beetlejuice. And I love when shows do that, when everything's kind of intertwined.
They're always good at the Halloween episodes. They were all good.
Loved those Halloween episodes. Let me see here. Where was I? Oh, Troy and Pierce were actually supposed to be the original Troy and Abed. You know how they had Troy and Abed in the morning? That whole thing. Well, Danny Pudi and Donald Glover actually ended up becoming really good friends in real life. So the script kind of shifted over to it being Troy and Abed instead of Troy and Pierce.
All right.
Now, writing the character of Abed, which was played by Danny Pudi, ended up leading to Dan Harmon finding out that he got diagnosed with autism.
All right.
Because that's kind of one of the whole things with Abed is he believed that he's on the spectrum. And as he was writing this character, Dan Harmon kind of had that revealed to him a little bit. The writers also had a whole backstory for Chang that involved him having psychotic breaks, coming in the form of his sister's ghost telling him to be evil. And the story was that he ate his sister in utero. Which they mentioned in the show. I believe, if I remember correctly, he does bring it up in the show. They just never went down that path. And then finally, Joel McHale has been given credit for getting Harmon hired back. Like we were talking about with Dan Harmon getting fired from the show after season 3. It was basically for his management style, is what they said.
All right.
And then Harmon ended up getting hired back for season 4 because McHale insisted that he get his job back. And if you go and you watch the series, season 4 is still good, but it's not up to the standard of all of the other seasons with Dan Harmon. Also, by the way, seasons 5 and 6, highly underrated.